Okay, looks like we're live.
Yes.
Okay, I would like to call to order the Wednesday, September 15th meeting of the Community Services and Personnel Committee. First order of business is roll call. Tonight we have with us all members of the committee: Greg Burnett, Diana Revolus, Tom Keegan, Dominique Johnson, Kadeem Roberts, Nicholas Sachinelli, and if I could speak, that would be good, and myself, Barbara Smith. Second item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone with us who would like to speak?
There is not.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting held on July 21st, 2021. Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Burnett moves the item. Are there any additions, changes? I didn't see anything myself.
Madam Chair, there's a slight change on page 2 at the top where it says Mr. Burnett, Burnette. That's my cousin Burnett. So if they can drop the E at the end, that would be me.
Okay, good catch.
Thank you.
It's very easy to catch when your name is misspelled, but it's not so easy when it's not your name. So anyone else? Anything? No, okay, all in favor of the minutes as amended, just raise your hand, please. Okay, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Sachinelli. Okay, great. Minutes passed unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion from the Community Services Department. So Lamont Daniel, of course, is with us tonight, and Maria. And Lamont is going to fill us in, give us an update on numerous aspects of what's going on with Community Services Department. And then Maria will share a Family Navigator Program information. So I'll turn it over to you right now, Lamont.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Fantastic. So good evening, everyone. So I'm going to do two pieces in terms of updates. One, I'm going to share updates, general updates of what's happening in the Community Services Department. And then I'm also going to provide a status update of the Equity and Justice for All initiative, which is important. I know people have been eager to understand where we are in the process. So I'll do the general updates first, and then I'll talk about the Equity and Justice for All initiative, which is all will be done through the slide deck for this evening. So I just always like to remind everyone, because this is also public and it gets placed on our YouTube, that the Norwalk's Community Services Department is the department where we help. We are city departments that directly affect the social well-being and health of Norwalk residents, including early childhood, the health department, human relations and fair rent, human services, library and youth services. So just to remind Norwalkers that if any services that are applicable within these categories, please reach out to the Community Services Department. And Maria will be talking about that more. We have some exciting information to share this evening. So in terms of a general update for those that are watching and to the committee, we're really fortunate that the Veterans Food Program, which is hosted by Connecticut Food Bank, now called Connecticut Food Share, we have been able to extend it for the month of September. We don't know yet if this will continue. However, the Connecticut Food Share organization is working tirelessly to fund this program to maintain at least for the remaining of the year. It costs money to get the trucks down, and it costs money to get some of the food. Some of the food is donated, but also many of the food items are purchased. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue. We extended it for the month of September. We know that the need is still there. In fact, today, every Wednesday at Veterans Park, we provided over about 800 cars that came through, and we're just fortunate. And I also always like to publicly thank the Connecticut Food Share, and there are many lower Fairfield County anonymous donors who have supported to keep this funded. as you recall, we were approached during COVID, and the program the intended was not to stay this long. So again, we're just thankful to the Connecticut Food Share. It's a great partnership. They see the need. We continue to provide our Veterans Park. And I want to thank the police, DPW, the entire team, because it really is a team effort to make this happen. And I always want to thank the volunteers. Every Wednesday, every morning, people are getting up early to be at the park between 7 and 7:30 to support this effort. It is fully volunteer based. The other thing I want to mention is that, as you recall, over the summer through the Norwalk Public Schools, through their program, we helped support and facilitate the various food sites. Well, that has discontinued, but I want to mention to Norwalkers that the food program will maintain at the Central Kitchen, which is now called the Frank A. Harris Nutrition Center. So Monday through Friday from 11 to 2. For individuals who, there's a small percentage of remote learning that are in need for their school breakfast and their stew lunch. They are still eligible, but they would have to go to the Central Kitchen. So that's another resource that is maintaining. They no longer will be able to provide throughout the community, and that's specifically because of the federal regulations no longer funds the broader community, which we had it at churches, at the libraries and community sites across the city. And then lastly, the Urban League of Southern Connecticut will be offering a free virtual first-time home buyers seminar over Zoom beginning this Saturday. For those that are listening, it's from 8:30 to 4:30. You can call 203-327-5810 or email admin@ulsc.org. So these are resources that we are promoting. These are resources, again, that are geared for Norwalkers as well. We also want to remind Norwalkers that we have an amazing partnership, and we always want to give kudos and thanks to our health department. We have constant testing, and the testing is 5 days a week at Rowton Middle School. And these are the days: Mondays from 4:30 to 7, Wednesdays, Thursdays, 4:30 to 7. Then on Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and on Sundays, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. No questions asked. Just come and get tested. And if you are still needing the vaccine, if you go to norwalkct.org/testing, we will also post our vaccine sites. They're still around and hosting at Calf Pasture Beach from CHC and other places as well. We want to remind people to get tested when you can, and remind people to get vaccinated if you can. So I'm going to transition into the Equity and Justice for All Commission and provide an update both to the committee and to those who are listening. So I wanted to begin by reminding us, lay a groundwork around, the rationale and how this came to be. And let me just move my face is blocking the screen on my end, so I can't see what's there. So we want to remind everyone that, if you will recall, we all watched the murder of George Floyd in May 22. And, we saw the country respond, and we saw nations across the world respond with national protests. And it's been characterized as a defining moment in our country. And right here in Norwalk, we even saw different demonstrations. And the city of Norwalk, we are embracing this moment, and we're not hiding from it. And we definitely view it as a chance to move forward together to become a stronger community. As many of you participated, Mayor Rilling and the administration, we promised that we would be proactive and devise a plan to address systemic issues and inequities, which includes race, gender, and many others in Norwalk. And that process would be to enlist community involvement and propose recommendations to create an Equity and Justice for All Commission. So I want to share and provide an update, and at the end respond to any questions or comments that you all may have. So as you remember, the Equity and Justice for All initiative, there were two major goals. Propose a structure for a commission to analyze institutions, systems, policies, biases, and practices that have adversely affected marginalized groups and underrepresented individuals living and doing business in the city of Norwalk. The second goal is to assist city employees with reviewing and evaluating and updating the 1993 Blue Ribbon Report on Race Relations. I might add, it was a good report, but it was outdated, and we wanted to review that and pick that back up. And also facilitate conversations to gather experiences about human relation issues, specifically what are residents' experiences like here in the city of Norwalk. There were originally 5 main objectives, but over the course of the RFP process and working with the consultants, we condensed them to 4 main objectives. The reason why we condensed them to 5, because one of the goals were kind of overlapping, so it made sense to devise the 4 main objectives. And so objective 1 is to facilitate a community engagement and stakeholder analysis that will inform the development of the Equity and Justice for All Commission work plan. This was objective 1. Objective 2 was then to establish and recommend an infrastructure for the Equity and Justice for All Commission, facilitating the development, planning, and implementation of an operational and a conceptual sustainable framework. You also can see on the slide deck that objectives 1 fall what I characterize as phase 1 in this process. Phase 2, objective 3 and 4 was internal. Engage city leadership and departments and building equity into policies and citywide initiatives to enhance internal efforts to achieve equitable workforce and contracting practices in city government. So it's important for me to say that the work to do the community work, we also had an objective to look at how we fared internally as a department. And then objective 4, which the community has asked us to identify during our RFP process, is to facilitate a community engagement strategy focused on police interaction and engagement. Because we know, depending on who you talk to in the community, there are people have different experiences. And so the Equity and Justice for All initiative, not commission, I specifically put a comma on there, not commission, because I know that in some earlier conversations, the way it was characterized as the Equity and Justice for All Commission. And the commission is a deliverable. The Equity and Justice for All initiative is how we get there. And that's important to distinguish. We are not at the point of establishing the commission. And it gets confusing because it's the same name, Equity and Justice for All Initiative, Equity and Justice for All Commission. And I guess lesson learned, we probably should have changed a little bit differently. So we're also learning through this process. But it's important to note that the commission is not planned. It was through the initiative that the deliverable would be to propose a recommended commission. And that's what the consulting team set out to do. But I want to hit these 4 areas because this is not easy work. This is not a process where we hire a consultant team and, to build a building, it's pretty clear cut. You have your rules and regulations. And it's important for me to really talk about, this is about people. I think we all would agree that, we all have our opinions and our thoughts and what we think should and should not be. And that's really hard work to get people in the room to kind of identify some common goals. And based on these kind of 4 bullet points, I want to just talk about some areas that through this process we're learning, have observed, and what's happening. That there's many historical challenges and complexities when you talk about race, equity, and justice. And we can also add a bunch of other things. And then how we engage people from all different backgrounds in this process. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But also it's important that the city, through best practices and our lead strategic partner, as you recall, the Fairfield County Community Foundation stepped up to the plate. And they also said, we believe in this process with the city of Norwalk. And they not only partnered with us, they made an investment and also became a lead strategic partner. And the city has and continues to rely on their expertise and the work and value they bring to this process. But it's important to note that we made a fundamental shift in terms of based on best practices and talking to other organizations, entities across the country, that the city, we weren't trying to lead or control the process. We really saw ourselves as a facilitator, a supporter, and collaborator. Why? In order to increase citizens and stakeholders' voice. The process only works if we have a cross-sector representation of Norwalkers to engage in the process. We all just saw the census. The numbers went up. We're about 90,000 here in the city of Norwalk. And we know from a practitioner perspective, that number is probably a little bit higher because not everyone participated in the census. So again, the complexity of how do you get a decent representation of residents to engage in the process so we can feel confident that all voices have been heard. And I will say that remains a challenge. So there was a fundamental change required about letting go of some of the traditional reins of power and trusting a process that citizens can and will effectively engage in the issues, because that's what this was about. Mayor Rowland has said on record that we want to hear the good things that we're doing, but we're not going to shy away from the things that we can do better. And the only way to do that is hearing people and hoping that people will come and share. And then lastly, it's a partnership, resulting in a healthy partnership with the community to address the issues or the problems. So I want to talk about phase one, which is the community engagement piece. That's the piece that's, which in my opinion is the nuts and bolts. And, there were some challenges, and be upfront. Many folks that may be watching have participated in some of these community conversations, some haven't. And we continue to work with the consultant team to help them understand the context of our city, but also rely on our strategic partner, the Fairfield County Community Foundation, to really lend best practices and the best way to approach this work. And so I want to lay the groundwork around these three areas. So the more people who know what is going on and who are willing to work toward a goal, the more likely a community is to be successful in reaching its goal. That's a best practice. So presently, the consultants have roughly engaged about over 100 people that have been engaged in the process. Community engagement is not driven by a model so much as by a framework of guiding principles, strategies, and approaches. There are many ways to do this. And one way may not be better than the other. I think what's important is what makes sense to our city. And so community engagement is both a blend of science and an art, because again, we're talking about people. And then lastly, establishing an appropriate benchmark that engage all populations while paying close attention to those often excluded. And that is very important to us. When the consulting team promoted events, yes, we had people engage, but we also have to ask ourselves those questions around who's not engaged, what group is not represented, but not only ask the question, but identify why and how do we get them to the table. And so that lends to really understanding the sensitivities of our community, its context, and understanding why the critical engagement process is important. So where are we? Number one, with the pandemic constantly upon us and approximately 100 people currently engaged, we asked the city and our strategic partner, Fairfield County Community Foundation, asked the consulting team presently to focus on phase one objectives. And that is to gather the information thus far. They've been working in our community about 4 months from their community outreach, strategies, engagement, and we asked them to prepare a full report of their findings and of their work to date. This is currently in progress right now. Second, while efforts were made to promote participation, we were not seeing the turnout from a cross-section of residents. As this committee has even heard or previously, that's a challenge for all of us of how do we promote what we're doing, how do we promote our services and resources so residents know that if you're in need, there's help. And that seems to be a challenge. And this process was no different, especially talking about equity and justice and with the pandemic approaching us. Number three, over the past 4 months working, challenges persist, as I alluded to, and I would like to talk about that a little bit, specifically around inviting residents into a process. Then we're asking them to trust the process. Then we're asking them to believe in the process, to be patient with the process, and identifying the right approach for the process. Again, we're talking about people, not building a building or creating some, project. It's people. And these issues are real. And again, this work is no different. And then number 4, our commitment is to stay the course. We are anticipating reading the findings from the recommendations from phase 1 with our strategic partner to assess the strategy and the approach. Because I do believe there's always room for improvement. So what's next? Again, we've asked the consulting team to provide us a comprehensive report of what they've done, what their findings are, offer any suggested recommendations, so we can then look at where we move. This means that we review all information from objectives 1 and 2, and also to identify any gaps that should be reassessed or revisited, specifically ensuring that cross-sector representation has been a part of the process. We also want to enlist additional key stakeholders as strategic partners. There's no way we can do this alone. And then the third bullet is establish the framework to promote equity in policies and practices among city departments. We have not started that piece yet. And then develop the action plan for phase 2 and objectives 3 and 4. So in my closing, I want to thank our strategic partner, the Fairfield County Community Foundation. They really have been a lead to help us understand when we're frustrated, when the process is frustrated, both internally, how to figure out and offer us their expertise. I also want to thank the Norwalk partners and those of you that have presently participated in these discussions. I'm aware there's a lot of mixed feelings and opinions around how we're doing it, but what is important is that we continuously, myself, Maria, and the Fairfield County team, taking the feedback, course correcting with the consulting team to figure out how to show up and do what is right for our constituents. And I want to thank the many constituent groups that have been contacted who have participated in the community conversations to share their experiences. So this work is not finished, and this work is certainly done. It's an evolving process, but our commitment is to stay the course. And I'm happy because we've actually had contact with the superintendent's office. As you all know, they're working on some race equity work. We're in constant contact with Norwalk Acts. They are also working on strategic equity work. And through Maria's leadership prior getting here, we're also working with the Norwalk Chamber of Commerce. There is energy around this work. The city is playing a key role, but we also need everybody at the table. So thank you. This is the update thus far. We look forward to reviewing the documentation and then again, coming back and reporting to this committee and the public around what the findings were so we can identify where we move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll turn it back to you and I'll respond to any questions that you all may have.
Yeah, thanks, Lamont. I would just like to go ahead and see if anyone has any questions. You answered mine in your presentation, but let's see if anyone else would like to raise any questions. It was a very complete presentation.
Thank you.
I mean, under your leadership, even the challenges that came up with the community engagement, I know that you've got things, moving in the right direction. So, so that's really good. I think COVID has really created a problem for that type of thing. But, between Community Services Department, Fairfield County Community Foundation, I mean, my question really was, how closely had Norwalk Acts been involved? I mean, we know how important they are in the community with this type of work. So, definitely good to see we're moving in the right direction.
And I would just, just share again to those that also may be watching, and I'll say it again, this is not easy work. It evokes a lot of feelings and emotions, which I've observed. People have different opinions of why we should be doing this, should we be doing this, what matters. But we're committed to it, and having the community embrace it is the best way, and we got to get it right to make sure all voices are at the table, and that's the struggle. And I think most practitioners who do community engagement know that that's the piece we all grapple with, is getting everyone at the table, or at least all representation at the table, so that when we do have a product, we can say we feel confident to say that, obviously we can't talk to all 90,000 people, but representation is important. And we're committed to doing that, even if it takes a little bit longer, but that is the commitment.
Mr. Burnett, do you have your hand raised?
Oh, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I basically have three questions going back to the very beginning of the presentation. One, is the COVID testing still free? I know there's a lot of rumors out there that as mandates are placed on people that are not vaccinated, they have to get COVID tests once or twice a week for their employment. And the cost of getting free testing, the employers aren't going to cover that. Insurance companies are starting to push back on covering it. So I'm curious as if the testing that we're offering is still free.
You're muted.
You gave a great answer, but you were
and
muted.
I've been doing really good on the new thing. So that's a great question. The testing site at Rowan Middle School is a city-sponsored, health department-sponsored COVID testing site. So yes, it is free. However, they will ask for insurance if you have insurance. If you do not use the Rowan Middle School, we don't have jurisdiction, so some may charge, some may bill. You're kind of up on your own. So we are encouraging Norwalkers, with the hours that we are able to provide, use the Rowan Middle School site.
Great, thank you. Question two was, you mentioned a lot of services that are being offered in terms of the food services, et cetera. And other things that are offered. You talked about the first homeowners opportunity. The Board of Ed is also working on this family center that is also supposed to offer families several pieces of information to help them not only navigate through the school system, but also in the community. Are you working in partnership with them?
Yes, and I'm liking your questions. I hope number 3 is good too. Well, Maria will be talking about our family navigation program. And also I can say that I've actually had an opportunity to meet with the superintendent, and we are having those conversations right now. How do we really do a focused collaboration with some of the services and the vision and mission that we have in community services to make it really complementary to what the Family Center is embarking on? Those conversations are active, and we have some ideas that we just can't share right now because we're kind of figuring out. But to your question, we are having those conversations, Councilman Burnett, and we're both just trying to figure out what makes sense. When do we show up? When do we pass the baton? And we're going to be formalizing kind of what that looks like over time, which is pretty exciting.
Great. Great to hear that. My final question is, I thank you for the presentation on the Equity and Justice Initiative. And I understand the complexity and the difficulties that surround doing this type of work. However, as you mentioned, we have a great document in the Blue Ribbon study that was done back in 1993.
Correct.
I'm just curious if there's any elements of that document that we can look at and maybe, modernize, update, and address, kind of, the short hitters that we might be able to address while we're looking for the overall big initiative to formulate and take place. Because, again, George Floyd happened last year. It'll be a few more months before we're talking 2 years. So, is there anything that we can do just to show some progress? And by looking at that Blue Ribbon Commission work, is there some element of that we can say, okay, we're gonna modernize, bring this up to 2021 and work on this little piece in addition to the larger initiative?
And I like that question as well. Let me answer it this way. I guess, Councilman Byrne, I guess for me, it depends how you identify progress. For me, identifying progress is having these conversations. And I know the community, myself included, want to see something. But I have to tell you, in this process, not being a Norwalker, but now I consider myself a Norwalker, there's some strong feelings around whether we should be doing this work or not. And the only way to do that is we have to find some level of commonality so we can move this work forward. And so I see progress as, for the first time, Norwalk Acts, the school, we're talking about equity and race as a community. This is not the city's agenda. This is not the school's agenda. And this is not Norwalk's Acts agenda. This is a community agenda. So that's a first. I think the other piece is we have been successful in identifying, again, how you quantify success, I guess is what I'm saying. Individuals that for the very first time and say, I think I want to know more about what you're doing and how can I be involved? So I don't have these big, large goals to say this is what happens, but we also are looking for what we characterize as those low-hanging fruit opportunities, and we're constantly looking for them. And to answer the question about the Blue Ribbon Report, that's what's happening right now. If those who've read it, if you take 1993 off and put 2021, just by virtue of the issues, we can say with confidence the issues haven't changed. What has changed, Councilmember Burnett, is the context. So while the issue is still there, if we use the same context, we're not going to make an impact. What the consulting firm has sought out to do, which is, where we're working with them to kind of, help them better strategically move, is the context correct? The only way to get the context is talking to the people. Housing was an issue then, and most people will agree housing is an issue now, but is the context the same? And so that's what we set out to do for the Blue Ribbon Report. A deliverable or some of the activities is to update that particular document. But again, 100 people has been engaged so far, and this becomes the argument. Some people will say, oh, 100 people wasn't good enough. Or some people may say, oh, 100 people were. Based on best practices and conversations with our least strategic partner, we're looking at least about 500 people to be engaged in this process. Is that ambitious? Maybe, but I'm hoping we can at least get close to that number so we can feel confident that, a good decent amount of community individuals are involved. What the consulting team will be doing over the next several weeks is to then identify, based on the past 4 months, to kind of get at, could we do something, is to say, these are some things that the city can do now that is in our control. Because remember, some of these issues are beyond state control, beyond the city itself, meaning, our administration, our departments. And so we're anticipating the report to speak to that. So we can, as an administration, say, this is what we can do now. We've had some discussions around formalizing how businesses can, seek out support from economic development. There's been a disconnect. Some people say when they make phone calls, depending who you talk to, you get this answer and that answer. So, the consulting team has been kind of sharing us anecdotally, but this report, and it's not this exhaustive report, it's just a report on what we can do now. We're anticipating in the weeks to come, so we can hopefully begin to say, these are some things we could do, and then still look at these long-term areas that we have to continue working forward to. I hope that kind of at least somewhat addresses your question.
Oh, yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you, I
much.
appreciate it.
Ms. Revelous?
Mic check. Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. So I just want to say the work is great. but I just want to come back to one point. I think that Councilman Burnett is saying, it was when like almost the first time that who I forgot led by us was in front of us, and I said about the data, the points, and like we already know what's needed, and to still keep discussing things that have not changed since 2021, 1921, 1821, just being funny, but I'm just saying, it's things like housing is a problem. Stop talking about housing. Home ownership is needed. NACA is a company that works with first-time home ownership. We need NACA. Let's get them here. Let's talk to them. Language. The language line should be with every person. We have an administrator that deals with our accounts. They should be at every table. Health. We have literally and again in nutrition, like there's certain things, again, we don't need to keep sitting around the table and talking about. We know it's actually very rudimentary to fix it, and if we can get those things done, tangibly show our community that we're making changes, then that trust to come and be involved will happen. But for right now, even with being an advocate, right, a lot of it, it's, you know, we're still waiting for you to do it, right? They need to even trust us to do it so they can do it themselves, right? Let's stop doing data points over and over and over again to things we already know, right? Very rudimentary. You need to breathe, right, to live. We need home ownership. Let's go a housing. We need home ownership. You know what I'm saying? So I think if we could get those type of things in order in an equitable manner, our residents would actually see a tangible change, and then will become more open and engaging and vocalize exactly what the residents, our community themselves want, right? So I just think, again, it's great work, but doubling back on sometimes the data points can get repetitive. We know it. Let's do it.
And thank you for that, Councilwoman. And I agree with you 100%. And you're very familiar with the work that Norwalk acts. I don't know if you participated on this past meeting. What I can tell you is that you're absolutely right. We don't need to review data, and that's not what's happening. But, you know, I want to be very clear that, again, you know, the city, through this piece of work, it requires partnerships. And one of the areas that we are actively working on and pursuing right now is we're asking organizations who have ownership in maybe housing in these other areas to adopt our principles that equity matters to us. Or, you know, what is your demographic around gender and race? You know, can you share that data to hold people accountable? And, you know, some partners are like, absolutely, but it's through the relationship with entities that also have ownership in some of these policies that you have just described, that we all have to agree that this is important so that we can work together to really get to the impact that you would like to see. And that's ongoing. We've met with the largest housing organization here in Norwalk, which was a very good meeting. We're meeting with decision makers and policy influencers here in Norwalk where the state has some oversight, having these conversations. And again, you know, we're asking them to adopt that this matters to our city. How can you help us get there? So I just agree with you, but it takes community and other partners that we're working to get them to adopt, and the urgency, how it's important to us in our city. And keep pushing, because I think that's important.
And can I just add to that work?
Please,
it's not about housing, but Diana, to your point in regards to language, right? So we're looking at, we have the citywide language line that all city employees have access to. We're working with the family navigators and the community resource specialists to educate the community to say, if you walk into a city building and you need assistance with language, here's how you ask, right? And so we're looking at what materials can we use coming from the health center world. You know, we serve patients from so many different countries that speak so many languages. And so understanding what tools, when someone walks into a building and they can't even say, I speak this language, what tools can we have that they can just point to it and say, this is the language I speak to, and then the person can then get the language line. So we're hearing that not only from the feedback we're getting from the work that's been done by the consultants, but also from the family navigators who have been speaking with the families, right? Who understand what their experience was when they went to a department. From the community resource specialist, when they're getting a call from someone who doesn't speak, a language that they speak. And so how do we communicate not only internally, right, within the city to know what our resources are, but how do we educate the community to say, when you need someone to speak your language, or when you choose to speak the language that you are most comfortable with, how do you ask for that? So it's that both and education on both sides.
Thank you,
And we're doing,
Maria.
and that work is happening now.
Thank you.
Mr. Keegan.
Hi there. Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize, Lamont, that this is a very complex, very complicated issue. My question is, to Greg's point, how involved has our police department been with your initiative?
Well, on my slide deck, that's a great question. Thank you. We have not gotten to objective number 4 yet. We were so embedded in this community engagement piece. And so from this reporting, we definitely anticipate moving to objectives 3 and 4. And also, it's just been challenging. I don't know the other way to say it. And, we've been quite ambitious with all these goals. And I think through this reporting that we're anticipating to see, I think we also have to, as a city, look and say, what is really doable? Because it's becoming so time consuming. Remember, it's just Maria and I, that it has become a full-time job. And so, and not to minimize the importance, but we're talking with the mayor around, what do we need to do? And Fairfield County Community Foundation, even looking at additional funding that maybe we need to bring somebody on to really own a lot of this, because we still have our day-to-day as well. So the objective 3, Councilman, in full transparent, we haven't gotten to yet. It's on the list, it's there, and it's just a matter of trying to move forward within the pandemic, our day-to-day, and then the complexities. But most certainly, we are committed to getting there. It's just working, a workflow and capacity to make sure we don't shortchange in the integrity of the work.
Can I just ask Mr. Sachinelli, who is the chair of Health and Public Safety? I mean, there have been a couple of things that have come to the council in terms of, transparency, police transparency, things that we want to see. But Mr. Sachinelli, is there anything that, that you are aware of that, is going on with the police department that addresses any of these issues in your discussions with the chief?
They've been very progressive with a lot of the items. Not to speak to any specifics, but I could bring it back to this group if that's something that you'd like to do, because they've been trying to do everything that they can. They've been looking for ideas and they've been trying to implement certain things, such as the transparency. They do want to go back to additional forms of community policing, et cetera. But I can't speak to anything specific currently, so I could bring it back to the group.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful if you could just, check in with the chief and see what you might be able to bring back to us next month.
And
Yeah,
Madam Chair, if I may, Madam Chair, through you, so much is going on in so many different pieces, can't remember. I want to go on record to say that in my engagement and conversation with Chief Koholek, he's extremely supportive and saying, hey, when we're next, we're ready to engage. We just, to your point, Councilman Keegan, we just not have had that official, but we have made outreach. He is fully aware that part of this process includes police interaction and people's perception, and he has been extremely supportive.
And it is a priority with the mayor. And so
Correct.
I know that he and the chief are having those discussions as well. Mr. Burnett, you had something else?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just this update is very important and also very appreciated. And I would just make the recommendation to you, Madam Chair, that we invite Lamont and Maria to come to the next caucus meeting so that they can share this update with the rest of the council. There's several council members here, and Council Member Keegan is here, but I think it's important for the entire council to hear this update, because we all have made a commitment to this effort, and they need to know where we're at, what we're doing, the progress that we've made, the progress that we're intending to make, so that we have a full council commitment behind the race and equity initiative that's taking place. So I would make that recommendation at the next caucus meeting. We extend the invitation to share this presentation.
Agreed. And in fact, Lamont and I talked about him updating the caucus, but we both felt it was important to update the committee first. So, we can talk about that offline, but if you could be thinking about that, presenting to the caucus at our next meeting, that would be great.
Certainly.
Mr. Keegan.
Yeah, one last thing, and we have 3 committee chairs here presently, and I'm hoping, in an effort to further the relationships between our community, our police department, and Lamont, I've been a police officer for 44 years, okay? Not in Norwalk, but in another community. I think it's extremely important that our community and our police department have a sense of togetherness. I do believe that celebrating the life of Officer Cesar Ramirez, which we haven't done yet, I don't know why. I think Public Works is supposed to take the lead on it. I think that would be a great event for all of us to embrace. And I think that we should really, I don't know where it is right now, but I would like to see us, celebrate what he did for our community. And I just think it'd be a great way for the police, the community, to all embrace one event and walk away, with some togetherness. And now I'll be quiet.
No, it's a really important point. And I do believe that they were waiting for the family. The family wanted it to, be enough of a celebration that, COVID wasn't going to be a factor. And it does seem to be like COVID just continues to be a factor. So,
I just don't want it to go, for us to forget.
Agreed.
That's all. I don't want us to forget.
Yep. Ms. Revoluz.
Back on what Councilman Keegan said, I think one of the greatest missed opportunities that our current police department is community engagement, that they just literally, it pains my heart every time I see a police officer in their car on their phone while these kids are at a bus stop. And that's one of the things, again, not to throw it off, but that in light of the way, the type of officer we had in Ramirez, not to say they're not there, but it's not showcased in the way it was before. I just want to double back on, hopefully we can do something like that. Of course, understanding how the pandemic has been a grave annoyance to doing something of such, but it pains me of that missed opportunity right there. That's especially with our kids, that I just want to give a double back to Tom, to Mr. Keegan, and just say yes to that. And hopefully we can push for more engagement with our officers. It's actually quite discerning to see. And sad to lose, because he was, particularly for South Norwalk, for my district, he was our officer. He was involved. Our babies knew him, that's all.
Thanks. Anyone else have any questions or comments before we let this go? I do just want to go back. Mr. Burnett had brought up the Board of Education's Family Center. in the Norwalk Acts quarterly convening, there was a brief presentation about, what some of their goals were, and that, they weren't able to go into much detail about it. But, I found myself thinking the same thing. It's like so much of what Community Services Department does, dovetails with what their goals are. So, I just also wanted to, just state that, I think a collaboration between the city and the Board of Ed on that part would be really beneficial to the entire community. So, oh, yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, actually, you just reminded me of a question, something that came up. I was unfortunately unable to complete that whole convening because I had a speaking engagement, but I spoke to another organization who themselves said they spoke up that day. And one of the things they were talking about is it seems to be a bit of a, what's the word? Closed in letting outside organizations come into like the schools or, to give additional help because there's so much. There's kids missing in between. And for organizations like, let's say myself, Ashe Creations, and wanted to come in, there seems to be a little bit of a holdback for outside organizations to come in and help facilitate and be a part. Where would you sit on that? How do you see that to be? It was a part of the convening I missed. So you just brought it up and it reminded me of a conversation I literally was having today that was brought up to me. Especially particularly with the schools, feeling like the schools, the Board of Education, in a sense, doesn't seem to be as inviting to open organizations that want to come and help.
I mean, I think that those are questions, for the superintendent's office, for the.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I mean, if, Lamont, if you might have something on the city side that you'd want to share there, but
I apologize.
Those are questions really more for the superintendent's office.
I would omit the question. I will bring it back then. I apologize. It's just, you brought it up and it reminded me.
Got it. Okay. Maria, you have your hand raised.
Yeah. I'm trying to follow the Zoom etiquette. So I just wanted to add, because I know, I think in this process of the equity and justice initiative is, what steps can we take while we're waiting for the data as we're waiting to form the commission, right, and the end result. And so to the point about engaging the police and where we're at with that, and having known Officer Ramirez from the work at the health center, he was a board member at the health center for many years, attending the National Night Out and seeing community with the police and the interactions, it's one event, but the community engagement, seeing kids and community members interacting with various members of the police department, the fire department, community organizations was just so positive that I went to my first one 2 years ago, I think it was, and I was just floored and impressed. And when I went this year, that same positive energy. The other piece in thinking about how do we take little steps to engage, we have Lieutenant Dino, who heads the community policing department. He is on our youth advisory board. And the reason for inviting him is, again, how do we bring partners who interact with young people to the table to really look at what's going on in the community? What are they seeing? How can we create and operate a youth services department that serves the needs of today's youth? And so how do we bring in all those partners? And how do we bring in, not only talk about the kind of the tough issues, but all the positive work that is happening? And so Lieutenant Dino does sit on the advisory board, again, to help us understand what's going on and then what resources do we need to bring into the community and build on that relationship. And so I just, again, thinking about how do we take these small steps to affect long-term change?
Yes, Ms. Revolus, and then let's move on.
Last question. Do they do anything with the dogs?
I will find out. I honestly, I don't know,
that would be cool.
But I will find out.
That would be cool.
Okay.
Okay. So Lamont, do you want to introduce Maria's?
Yes, so again, thank you. This is a great discussion and I look forward to continuing it with you all and then moving forward on the recommendations as indicated by Councilman Burnett. Well, Maria is not a stranger. I just want to tee it up in the fact that as you all recall, because I had to go to this committee to accept funding from the foundations, and we're really excited with that funding. We were also able to hire an evaluator to really take an outside look, an external look around what is the Family Navigator program? How do you explain, how do you talk about it? So Maria is going to explain, what the evaluation, what we learned. We have some data from the young people and families we worked with. And then she'll also talk about the community resource specialist that through this committee, you all approved 2 part-time employees to become the city's first community resource specialist, which we launched the Community Resource Hub. So, in talking with the chair, I think it's important that sometimes I'm always asking for, can you all approve this? I need some money for this. So this is a good opportunity to say what the efforts based on your approvals and how the funding is making a difference and impact in the lives of families and more importantly, residents of our city. So we have a couple of slides and then Maria and I are tag team any questions. So I'll serve as the slide deck person for Maria. Can you all see that? Let me move this over from current slide. Maria, take it away.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Council, Common Council. I am really excited to be able to speak with you and talk about the results of the Family Navigation Program. As you all know, about a year ago when I started, the Connectivity Initiative partnership with the Norwalk Public Schools was launched. And this initiative really was to engage eligible families to receive free, reliable, high quality internet who didn't currently have hardwired internet connection. The pandemic threw everyone into remote learning. And in that process, we realized that there were some students who weren't going to be able to engage in remote learning because they just didn't have access to internet. And so this initiative was to provide that resource, that service, so that they can continue learning. Digital literacy resource offered to students and families to effectively access virtual learning tools with Norwalk Public Schools. I am the least knowledgeable or technically challenged person. And so we learned that many of us were. And so in order to fully engage in remote learning, you need to understand digital literacy. You need to understand, how to use the technology. And helping families who have additional needs through the Family Navigator to connect them with food, housing, workforce, mental health, and other community-based resources. If a family can't afford internet, what else can't they afford? And how can the Family Navigators connect them to these resources? And I just want to acknowledge that the community-based organizations really stepped up and responded to our need and to our call to help families. Next slide. So the Family Navigator program, it is built on a trusted relationship to provide support and resources that the family determines is important to the care of themselves and their child. It is very much a family-centered program. It's a collaboration between the navigator and the family, creating a family-driven plan that focuses on the solutions and keeps families at the center. We can't tell families what they need to do. Families needed to tell us, this is what I need, this is my priority. I need to put food on my table to feed my children before you ask me to get them to log into school. So families really drove the process, and the navigators were there to support them in understanding what resources were available and that it's okay to ask for help. And understanding that distance learning and technology can be very difficult, and it identifies resources available within the school. Next slide. So highlights from the report that we're going to go over. The Family Navigator program increased the number of Norwalk families with high reliable internet connection, the ability to use the internet to fully participate in virtual learning, the ability to connect existing community resources and services, and empowerment in the school sphere. We learned that many families were new to Norwalk, new to Connecticut, and didn't understand how to even contact the school, not because they didn't know where the school was, but just not understanding the education system and how it worked and the process for communicating at the different levels and need. And the added challenge of internet and technology of trying to really engage with and connect with the schools. And so the family navigators, and you'll see in the results, were really able to support families and connecting them to the rich resources that the school system provided to help support families. Next slide. So the Family Navigator program at a glance addressed the connectivity and technology needs related to school success, provides bilingual, bicultural. Our Family Navigators speak English, Spanish, Haitian Creole. They provided peer mentoring and support and links to community resources to address family needs. Families, as I said earlier, were connected to or received high quality internet, the ability to use the internet, and the ability to connect to existing resources. So we did a needs assessment at the beginning when we first engaged with families, and we did an assessment when a family got to the completion point. And so we found that 97%, there was a 97% improvement of families who needed internet and qualified for internet, a 96% improvement in rental assistance, connecting them to resources to be able to pay their rent and stay in secured housing. An 87% improvement on PowerSchool. And if anyone has tried to use PowerSchool, we know sometimes how difficult it is. So the number of families and parents that were able to understand how to access PowerSchool, the importance of getting an account, looking at the account, and how do they support and speak to their child about what they're seeing in PowerSchool, but also how to speak with and connect with the teachers to understand what they're reading in PowerSchool. And then a 95% improvement on community connections. We have all of these organizations and resources in Norwalk. Some families just didn't know how to connect or where they exist or that they even existed. Because again, there is a population of families that never had to access community-based resources. And so the Family Navigators were able to make that connection. Next slide. So we served close to 300 families directly. Over 900 students were referred. Some families engaged, some declined, some called us back and said, I changed my mind, I do need some help. And so throughout the process, we saw over 200% improvement in the families, in the 94% of families who needed access to reliable internet. 72% of the families didn't know how to use PowerSchool. There was a 71% improvement in that area. 80% of the families reported that their children can now fully participate in distance learning experience. And 95% of the families have information and skills to help their children be successful in school. And that is what we wanted to create, a system, a support system that allowed parents to really focus in supporting their child's education during this time. So what did we find out from our needs assessment, aside from the technology and the success in school, is we found that food and clothing, healthcare, community connections were at the top of the list of what families needed. And after working with the Family Navigators, 100% of those families were able to connect, to get food, access to food resources, healthcare, community connections, disability services, employment, mental health, and housing. These are all points that came from the results of the needs assessment and working with the families, that they now know where to go to access resources. So one question that we asked is, do you know where to go to get food? when we started the program, they would say, no, I don't even know where to go to get food. By the end of the program and working with a family navigator, they were able to report that, yes, they knew how to get food and they had a plan to getting that food and meeting their needs. And so that is really the overall goal, is not only to identify, to identify the families that needed the assistance, to educate them on the resources available within the community, and then to empower them to access those resources, to come up with a plan so that they can sustain the health of their family. Next slide. So before I move on to the Community Resource Hub information, does anybody have any questions on our Family Navigator program?
Actually, I do, Maria. How do you foresee the Family Navigator program moving forward with students back in the classroom? You know, it's obviously very focused on the remote learning, and of course, you know, you still need, you know, even in school, you still need the access for homework and, you know, assignments. But how do you see it shifting?
So what I can say is this week alone, so we're in week 3 of school, I have received probably about a dozen referrals for assistance, not only with internet, but for resources. And I think that the work and the partnership with the schools to be able to say, we have family navigators here to help, that the school staff remember, you know, from the long summer, remember that we're still here, right? And I think that that's part of the impact that we've had in helping and supporting families. So this is the primary reason why this initiative was created and founded and funded is because of the remote learning. But through the process and over the year, what we learned is it's not just about the internet, it's about what are the services and who do families speak to? How do they communicate? And sometimes it's hard to go into a system, into a school, into City Hall, into any, you know, official building capacity to say, I need help. And so the family navigators, in their approach in engaging families, were able to speak to it. And I think that then word of mouth, you know, came around where we started hearing from other families saying, can you help my sister with her kids? And so I anticipate that we will continue to see referrals coming in because there is that need to support, right, for internet so that they can do their homework and they can do their research. But I also think there's that need to be able to support families in the other areas that we identified.
Anyone else have questions about Family Navigators?
And I just need to say that this would, the family navigation and the connectivity initiative could not be possible without the support of the Peer, Astrid, Heinrich Family Foundation and the Ritter Foundation and the Dalio Philanthropy Foundation, who really supported the funding, and then all of you who continue to support the work that's being done through this group. And of course, my amazing team of family navigators. So the next huge task and very exciting piece of work that's been happening out of the Human Services Department is the Norwalk Community Resource Hub. And this is really serving Norwalkers throughout their lifespan. The Community Resource Hub, one of the things that I learned when I first came to Norwalk 6 years ago, is that there was no real centralized place to get information or to connect residents to resources. We have all of these great organizations, all of these great resources, but how do you connect, right? And so the Community Resource Hub is a place where we can connect residents to all of the resources. It's an information referral community linkage to services, including catchment towns, interpretation, translation assistance with applications for other agencies, right? Sometimes the social service system can be very complex. And so understanding what resources, what programs does someone qualify for, and helping the residents sort through that. So we're not just saying call these 10 organizations and figure it out, the community resources specialists have done a lot of homework and research on what organizations, what are the requirements, and then being able to explain that to residents. It's a direct, hyper-local 211 direct line with support. We work with 211 when someone needs assistance, and sitting with residents to be able to get through that process. Computer accessibility to enroll in programs. So we all know that some of our residents just don't have access to the technology at home. And so being able to set up appointments and time for them to come in and sit with a community resource specialist who can assist them with completing the application or walk them through understanding how to complete the application. There's one-on-one assistance and follow-up. We have designated office hours, a swing space for targeted community resources, particularly, or for example, our rental program, we have the Urban League of Southern Connecticut coming in to utilize the swing space, so that we're bringing an organization that is based in Bridgeport, based in Stamford, but serves Norwalk, bringing them to Norwalk, so that transportation, so we can eliminate the issue around transportation. And then the coordination of utilizing the Unite Us platform, so that referrals and communication between agencies is expedited and efficient. Next slide. So we're utilizing the Unite Us platform, and it's really a platform where community providers can receive referrals. They can send referrals and receive referrals. And being the community resource hub, we are able to push through and quickly identify which organizations can really assist a resident when they need the assistance, right? So when someone calls us and they say, I need help with rental assistance, is getting them connected as quickly as possible, helping residents identify and understand and navigate the services and resources available to them, and really being that one-stop access point for information. And this helps us to build strong partnerships with our community providers and our key stakeholders, to really understand what are the trends that the community organizations are seeing, what are we seeing based on the referrals and the calls we're receiving, and how do we address gaps in services, and then how do we pull our partners together to address those gaps. Next slide, please. So the Unite Us platform allows us to pull data so that we can track and monitor how many residents are we serving, what type of requests and referrals are coming in, how many organizations are participating in Unite Us, and how many organizations do we have to follow kind of the phone call, faxing, and communication. So at this point, by July, we had our 2 part-time community resource specialists onboarded, trained to utilize the Unite Us platform. In that time, we've had a soft launch. We've assisted we've received 7 referrals for 76 clients. Services episodes we've provided, there's been a request for 99 service episodes, meaning out of the 76 clients, they created 97 electronic referrals. And out of those 97 electronic referrals, there were 99 services and connections made out of the 76 clients. So one client could have gotten a referral and had multiple referrals. They needed assistance with housing, they needed assistance with food access, and they might have needed assistance with mental health services. And so that one client created 3 referrals. We have 24 open cases that the community resource specialists are currently working with. We're able to look at what is our client demographics, who is being referred, who needs help. So there is the majority of the referrals generated are for adults, and it's broken down as you can see by age, and really looking, particularly at the services provided under human services. Where are our resources? Now that Family and Children's Agency is our municipal agent for the elderly, really be able to take those referrals we receive for seniors and connecting them to our municipal agent for the elderly, to making sure that they're getting connected to the services and getting that one-on-one assistance. what is our client, what is the makeup of our client based on their race and ethnicity, gender. We see that we're serving more women who are getting referred to our services, and the type of services that are requested. And so what I hope is to be able to continue to provide this data so that we can see the growth and the importance of this resource for the community. Next slide. So our Community Services Department resource, we now have a telephone number that you can call to be able to access really any service within community services. If you call the 203-854-7999 number, a community resource specialist will answer the call and be able to connect you with services within the Community Services Department. We are located in room 202, and translation services are available either by the staff that we have in the department or utilizing the language line.
Maria, I just want to underscore to the council that, Maria mentioned we are in our soft launch stage. So we have not worked with Josh Morgan to do our big, large public media launch. As you can see, without even making any public announcements, we already serve 76 residents. So the takeaway for you all today, the Common Council, is that when you're in your districts, give this number out. And we'll be doing our media launch so that if people need help, say, hey, call this number. We are so committed to serving every Norwalker. And the team will tell you, this is where I'm a stickler. I'm big on customer service. I am extremely big on customer service because I want to make sure that when Norwalkers call, they're respected with dignity, and we'll do our very best to help them. Obviously, we won't be able to help every issue, but our commitment is to at least direct them to their appropriate entity or service provider. And so this number now is public. Again, we have not promoted yet. We're working with Josh October to a press conference, all that kind of stuff. So the city of Norwalkers know that you can count on your city government to help you figure out, I need help, where do I go? And I also want to thank Maria and her team. When we brought her in, she just took the vision and ran. As you all remember, before COVID, I was talking about this stuff a long time ago, and I'm really excited to have Maria really take this on and really add the feet to legs and feel very proud that we are delivering what we committed to do, and that is to serve Norwalkers, those who need help. So thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
I think you said that already.
Yes.
We want to thank them again. And I guess we'll take any questions. Thank you again, Maria. Back to you, Madam Chair.
That was great. Thank you. And it's really terrific to be able to see the metrics, who you've served already. And, it's quite a few families or, individuals without publicizing it. So questions or comments? Ms. Johnson?
Thanks so much, Chair. And so much to say, but I'll be brief because I just am flooded with pride in the work that you all are doing, and seeing how much of a difference this is making for our people is just incredible. 76, the metrics without even publicizing is phenomenal. And then going back to the work you all are doing with the family navigators, I mean, those metrics were just absolutely, literally off the charts. Like, you just don't usually see that kind of retention rate and that kind of success rate. So I just want to commend you all so much. And just lastly, what I'll say is, none of us are surprised that there's this need, but I think that in particular, we're seeing needs greater than even professionals probably could have anticipated, right? So I know you are the professional, so I'll leave it to you, but for me, it's especially important because people are trying to get jobs, they're trying to get back in the workforce, and we know that in particular women are, I've heard a recent statistic, it's going to take 9 years for women to get back into the workforce. So seeing these statistics, to me, is an antidote. It gives me hope, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you. It's really incredible information to know that we are helping those who need it. And you're doing an incredible job. And I couldn't be more honored to be on this committee, to chair this committee, and to, to work so closely with you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall I take a motion? Ms. Revolus? Motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and stay safe.
You too.